I'd like to welcome you to today's membership luncheon, the Congressional Update, featuring Congressman Dan Newhouse, and it's sponsored by Battelle. I'm Lori Madsen. I'm President and CEO of the Tri-City Regional Chamber. Today, we're really pleased to host Congressman Dan Newhouse for what has really become an annual August tradition. We look forward to hearing updates from Washington, D.C., as well as his perspective on key issues impacting Central Washington and here at home in the Tri-Cities. Congressman Newhouse has been very busy. I understand it's harvest time too. Hi there. So glad you're here. Been very busy during this August district work period, traveling up and down the 4th District from the Tri-Cities to Moses Lake to Okanogan County to discuss forest issues, wildfires, rural health care, agricultural conservation, and implementation of the 2018 Farm Bill. In the House of Representatives, Congressman Newhouse has been working to keep the federal government on track and accountable for cleaning up the Hanford site. I'm sure we'll hear lots about that today. He's been active in supporting research and the mission of Pacific Northwest National Lab and has been working hard with the Appropriations Committee to ensure fiscally responsible government spending levels can be passed before the September 30th deadline. He recently hosted Dr. Carla Hayden, Librarian of Congress, in Central Washington, and has also hosted several pinning ceremonies to honor Vietnam-era veterans and their families. So today's program, Congressman Newhouse has prepared some brief remarks, but he really wants to open it up to your questions. We're going to try to get through all or as many questions as we can as time permits, and also please know that your questions may be filtered just to avoid duplicates. If you don't have a question right now, but you think of one during the program, it's not too late. Just type it in at any point. And I want to give a special thanks to Cascade Natural Gas for sponsoring our live polling of our luncheons. September 25th will mark 75 years since the B reactor went critical at Hanford, helping end World War II and ushering in the atomic age. Here to talk about the community-wide events to commemorate the 75th anniversary is Visit Tri-Cities President and CEO, Michael Novakovich. Please help me welcome Michael.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Dad. Visit Tri-Cities hosts and coordinates the Tri-Cities National Park Committee. And if you're not familiar, it includes participation from Visit Tri-Cities, Tridec, Port of Benton, Benton County, Franklin County, Hanford communities. We have representation from Senator Murray's office, Senator Cantwell's office, Congressman Newhouse's office. There's a number of people participating in this, including it's ran by our 4 city mayors. So this committee came together many years ago as an advocacy group for the development of the Manhattan Project National Historical Park. So we continue to work on the viability of the park, but something we've been working on most recently is creating awareness around the 75th anniversary of the Manhattan Project. So 75 years ago, men and women came to our community and they helped build this engineering marvel that is the iconic B reactor. And there's a lot of scientific achievements that are tied back to our Hanford heritage. If you think about it, space exploration, nuclear medicine, even the presence of Pacific Northwest National Laboratories here in our community. And it could be argued that if it wasn't for the endeavors of these men and women 75 years ago, our community wouldn't have Spud Nut. So chew on that for a minute. I know, it's true. Hey, but to commemorate this, there's a number of different community groups that have special events happening here in the month of September, and we want to draw attention to a handful of those. This year is the 75th anniversary of the Richland Players and the Mid-Columbia Symphony, and if arts are your thing, you want to be sure to check out Nuclear Dreams, where I saw Justin Rafa in here. Mid-Columbia Master Singers are going to be out at the B Reactor having a performance. If you haven't checked this out, it's absolutely amazing. And if you want to go check out the B Reactor and get a little bit of fitness, Bike Tri-Cities has Ride the Reactor happening out there, so you can talk to docents, take a tour. There's good grub and giveaways as well. Paul Rodriguez, he's a funny man. You've probably seen him in movies or on TV. He's going to be here. Glenn Miller Orchestra, a number of events. You can check out Hanford75.com for a complete list, and there's a link to tickets in there as well. One event, though, that I do want to call attention to is the City of Richland has brought back an event that happened in the early days of the Manhattan project, and it's the Atomic Frontier Day. Free festival for everybody. There's going to be a parade, B-17 flyover, mess hall, swing music. You want to check it out. Again, visit Hanford75.com. We hope you come out, get entertained, get educated. We hope to see you at one of these many events. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Lori. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael, for spearheading this important project. And all right, so we're going to move on with our program. And at this time, I'd like to represent our presenting sponsor, Battelle, and introduce Dr. Steve Ashby, the director of the Pacific Northwest National Lab, to say a few words about PNNL and introduce Congressman Dan Newhouse. So please help me welcome Dr. Ashby.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you very much, Lori, for the introduction. And on behalf of Battelle, the proud operator of the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory for the Department of Energy, it is our pleasure to sponsor today's luncheon. The Tri-Cities Regional Chamber is an important partner and advocate for all of us in this room and well beyond. We are fortunate to benefit from your leadership. We are fortunate to have your enduring support, and we especially appreciate your leadership, Lori, of the MyTri 2030 effort. And that's a visioning effort that's been going on in the community, and I think it portends quite well for where we're going. Thank you very much to you and the Chamber for doing that. Give her a big round of applause. I'd also like to thank you for all that you do in providing opportunities like the one we have today to hear from those who represent us at all levels of government and especially in Congress. And last week was an exceptionally busy but also great one for us in the Tri-Cities. TRIDEC hosted its annual Congressional Staff Tour, which is an important opportunity for us to engage directly with those who play a critical role to our elected officials. The day before that, the Association of Washington Business held its Federal Affairs Summit in the Tri-Cities, the first time that AWB has held this important gathering in Eastern Washington. And PNNL was pleased to host the event at our new Scientific Collaboration Center, Discovery Hall. This annual meeting brings together members and staff from Washington's congressional delegation with senior business leaders from across the state to collaborate on our top issues and opportunities. This year we had 5 members of Congress and many staff participate, including one member of Congress for whom this was her first visit to the Tri-Cities. And by all accounts, the meeting was a resounding success, garnering praise from AWB and the many attendees. We seize the opportunity of this convening to showcase in numerous ways how the Tri-Cities is driving innovation across multiple sectors and within several industries vital to our region and the nation. I believe that we opened many eyes and quite a few doors in the process. Our beautiful shorelines, sunsets, restaurants, and host of nationally renowned wineries likely didn't hurt and were the subject of many conversations. And thanks to the Tri-City Herald's news and editorial team, who did a great job in highlighting the event and its impact. We closed out the week at PNNL with great news from DOE. The formal selection of our laboratory is home to the proposed grid storage launch pad, a new facility to accelerate grid-scale storage and energy storage solutions. This decision is a testament to DOE's continued and growing confidence in the laboratory's many efforts to improve our nation's energy resiliency. And while we're still in the early process, this facility is key to our vision of growing the Tri-Cities into an essential hub of innovation for energy storage, especially at the grid scale. A constant throughout all these engagements and advancements for the Tri-City region is our friend and advocate, Congressman Dan Newhouse, who represents the Washington's 4th District. Congressman Newhouse serves on the House Committee of Appropriations, including subcommittees on energy and water development, homeland security, and the legislative branch. These are important committee assignments that reflect both his influence and the respect that he commands from his colleagues and House leadership. He's a strong advocate for our community, as evident in the work that he does every day on our behalf in the House of Representatives. He shines a light on the critical issues facing our community, advocates to fund our national laboratory and the Hanford cleanup, champions ways to grow our future workforce, many other issues as well. I remember your first campaign, Dan, when you were the only candidate who took the time to visit the National Lab to learn a little bit more about us. And after your election, you spent nearly 3 hours to learn a bit more about the issues that were important to us. And since that time, I think we've both lost track of the number of hours that you spent at the laboratory just learning about the issues that we face, in addition to the many hours and meetings you've had with others around the Hanford cleanup and the other needs that we have in the community. His advocacy advances PNL's national leading work in grid modernization, enables our continued progress on energy sciences and the grid-scale storage facility I just mentioned, and funds new research in important ecosystem interactions that occur where the shorelines and water meet, including those on the bank of the Columbia River. Dan Newhouse is also a gentleman. In a time when so many politicians yell and talk over one another, Dan takes the time to listen, including to those with whom he may not agree. I've witnessed this firsthand, and on many occasions, I thank him for reminding us how one can be both principled and civil. And so it is an honor to have him with us today, and my pleasure in welcoming to the stage Congressman Dan Newhouse.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for that great introduction, Steve. You read it just like I wrote it, so it's perfect. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I should start off, although I don't know if I need to apologize, but I'm usually in a tie and a jacket and things like that, but I think Lori said at the onset, we're in the middle of harvest time. I had all the intentions in the world of going back to the house and clean up before I came, but my wife was at least able to bring me a clean shirt, and I washed my hands. Is that good enough? We're picking hops. I want to make sure that there's enough hops available so that all you beer drinkers won't be disappointed this coming year. So we're working hard on your behalf. Thank you. And that reminds me of a lot of things that I'm working on. As you can imagine, some of my natural priorities in Congress are associated with being in business. Farming is a business just like most any other thing you can think of. We've got to make a profit every year. We've got a lot of issues, a lot of challenges, many of the same challenges that many people in business share. And so I hope you're okay with having a hands-on kind of a member of Congress. It kind of keeps me right at the forefront of some of the things that I need to be working on. Plus, my son needs a lot of help during this time of year, I think. At least I try to tell him that so I'm still relevant at some point. But I have spent a lot of time out at the laboratory. Last week was particularly fun to be a part of the forum that we were helped to host with the Association of Washington Business, which is kind of the state's chamber of commerce, I guess, for lack of a better description. As Steve mentioned, the work that is going on there is just tremendous. You're all aware of the lab, I know, but I think I've probably had the privilege of going out to the lab more than a lot of people in our community, and I didn't really fully appreciate, I got to tell you, the significance of what happens right here in our own backyard with the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. I mean, it's amazing the things that people are working on right now, or as we're sitting here in this room, the things that are going on out at the National Laboratory. We truly should be amazed, but we should also be very proud of the hard work that goes on there on our nation's behalf. So thank you very much, Steve, and everybody that works with you. I appreciate very much all the efforts that you put forward on our behalf. It's a good thing that this isn't like 3 weeks from now, because as you know, hop harvest is 24/7. And by then, I'm not even sure I can add 2 + 2 together. So the good news is I'll be going back to Washington, D.C. way before the hop season is over. Congress starts back up on September 9th. We're in the midst of our August recess, which I wish they would change that name. It's not really, recess conjures up memories of, going outside and playing and things like that. And maybe that's what Congress should be doing, but A lot of people are all over the country, all over the world, doing all kinds of different things. It's certainly a time for getting a lot of work done, and I've been in the district and have done some traveling on behalf of my congressional duties as well. But it's a busy time. And I truly think that there's a contest between my district staff and my staff in Washington, D.C. to see who can keep me the busiest when I'm in one place or the other. But I just want to briefly touch on a few things that are happening, that are going on. And then, like Lori said, maybe there's some interest in some questions, some things that you might want to ask me about in more detail. We could talk about a lot of different topics today. We truly could. There's just a lot of things that are in motion, a lot of things happening in Washington, D.C. I'm expecting that when we get back, well, I know that the Judiciary Committee is going to go back early and start talking about gun legislation in aftermath of what so many different unfortunate incidents around the country, and some just recently. I also know that there'll be continued energy and effort spent on the whole subject of investigations and Russian involvement in our last election, which we absolutely have to prevent. And also there'll be a lot of talk, continued push towards impeaching, or the subject of impeaching our president. As you can imagine, that takes a lot of oxygen out of any room, so that it really detracts from some of the things that we should be focused on, I think. But there's still a lot of good things happening and a lot of work going on. And then on top of that, it's kind of underneath all that, as you know, the presidential campaigns have already started, particularly on the Democratic side of the ticket, which they're winnowing it down. I think today is the deadline for qualifying for the next debate. And it looks like there only will be 10 candidates on stage at the next one, at least the last number I heard. So there's all that happening too. And as you know, a lot of members of Congress are running for president. And that certainly changes the dynamic of the conversation and the debate and a lot of the things that are being talked about and said. So I guess with that background, how are we going to get anything accomplished? Well, that's a good question. And we all, on top of that, we have a divided government, as you know. The House is under the control, Democratic majority, the Senate of Republican, and the White House is Republican. Although the Senate, even though it's a Republican majority, as you know, you need 60 votes to get most things passed in the Senate, and the Republicans don't have 60 votes. So there's still quite the balance of power there as well. So just a lot of things that you would think, well, this really doesn't look like a situation that we're going to be very productive, and you could be right. But on the other hand, I like to think that this is exactly how our forefathers meant our government to be. It should be very difficult to pass laws. It should be hard because we've all got to live with them. And we should go through a process that makes sure that the laws we pass are the best they can be for everybody. And when you have a divided government, I think that lends itself, it's not always a pretty thing to watch, but I think it lends itself, at least it should theoretically, for the opportunity for more debate, more discussion. When you have to, the Democrats can pass anything they want in the House. When it gets to the Senate, that's when the give and take has to happen, where the compromise has to happen in order to get anything across the finish line. And so even though, like I said, it may not be pretty to watch, I think we're still okay. As a country, we're still okay in how the system is supposed to work. Now we have, it's kind of fresh on my mind because of the summit, the federal summit that the AWB sponsored, hosted, or we were part of last week. Economic development. If you look around the state of Washington, the Tri-Cities area truly stands out, wouldn't you say, as being an area that is growing, is burgeoning. I think we lead the state in the amount of economic development, the rate of growth here. Just Well, there's a lot of indicators you can look at, but just announced in the Tri-City Herald that, what are there, 3 hotels being built right now, in one in each of the cities, which is, I think, a great thing. But there's a lot of growth, a number of new businesses that you recognized here joining the chamber. That's a good thing. Just the size of the crowd today in the room is I think speaks highly of the energy in our economy in the Tri-Cities. So there's that just doesn't happen by accident. A lot of that is certainly because of the people in this room. A lot of the chamber and the work that you guys do to promote this area is certainly responsible for that. So we like to think, I hope, you tell me if it's different, that in Congress we've been able to do some things to encourage and enable and to hopefully not get in the way of creating business opportunities, not just in the Tri-Cities, but in the state, all over the country, through some of the things that we passed through the tax reform, setting up opportunity zones, which I think Pasco just received some help there. There's a lot of opportunities that I think are there, and we're seeing the benefit of a lot of the groundwork that was laid in order for that to happen. So I'd be interested to hear more from you about what challenges that still exist, so that we can work on those things to try to fix them. But this really is, even, we have Hanford here, obviously, and there's a huge influx of federal money on an annual basis. And just as a side note, let me tell you, I think that's going to continue to get more and more difficult to secure every passing year. But the federal government is committed to making sure Hanford gets done, the cleanup work happens, and it's up to a lot of people in this room to make sure that happens in a timely and as safe a possible way as possible. And then it's up to me and some of my colleagues to make sure the funding is available to do that. And so it's a huge thing, a huge lift. 1% of the federal budget coming to one community in the country, that's not a small thing. So no pressure, guys, but we got to keep the work happening. It was a great thing. Last week, I was able to participate in the ribbon cutting of the operations control room out at the viticulture plant, which is huge. That's a sign of much progress. And so turning waste into glass, it's going to happen. It's going to happen sooner than we think. And that's a great thing. We have to show some success at Hanford in order for us to be able to continue making sure the federal government gets the appropriations here to make it happen. As I said, the Democrats are in control. It's probably not a surprise to you. I'm a Republican. That means I'm in the minority. But that's I guess, a change. But the one constant thing, let me assure you, is my priorities have stayed the same. There's still the same amount of work that I put into everything that I think is important for my district every single day. Just changes how you do things, who you talk to. And I think, I was, like to say in my legislative career, kind of like Representative Dye here, I grew up in the minority in Olympia, because I was always in the minority when I was serving in the state legislature. And one thing, Mary will attest to this too, what you learn quickly, that if you want to get anything done, that means you have to work with those on the other side of the aisle, particularly when they're in charge, right? But let me just say, that doesn't mean that you give up on what you believe in. It doesn't mean you're always going to agree with each other. That's why there's different political parties, right? There's just some things that we're philosophically different. But it does mean, I think, that you can still find those areas where you can agree, where you can move issues forward. And in the end, if you're in the majority, likely you're going to get your way. But if you're in the minority, you can work as hard as you can to affect what that final outcome looks like. And I think that's the hard work that we have to do every single day. One of the guests that we had last week I think it was said there were 5 members of Congress here in attendance, which was great. Senator Cantwell was here, Susan Del Bene, Kim Schreier. She was the first one. She had never been to the Tri-Cities. Can you believe that? Which is great she was here. I'm glad she came. And we took her out to the lab and gave her the fire hose version of Hanford, which was good. It was fun to watch somebody else go through that. And then my great friend Derek Kilmer was here, who represents Tacoma, the peninsula, that part of the state. He and I served in the state legislature together. He's a Democrat, but he's the kind of person that you can work with, that you can, in fact, we are part of something called the Bipartisan Working Group, which we meet on a weekly basis to try to find those areas of common ground so that we can move issues forward. We've had some successes there, particularly in the area of veterans and helping our veterans, but we're looking for more things that we can work on. Infrastructure, that's another thing. Republican or Democrat, everyone knows that we need to work on our infrastructure in this country. Lots of different things like that we're trying to find the common ground so we can move forward. And Derek's been a tremendous help at that. In fact, if you recall, a year ago, give or take, he spent a day in my district, and then I reciprocated and spent a day in his district, kind of an exchange program, which was really fun. I'd never really spent any time at the naval shipyards in Bremerton. I don't know if you guys have. It's a huge place, and they do a lot of stuff there for our nation's naval fleet. So that was pretty impressive. He's got to spend a lot more time out at Hanford to see the federal footprint we have here and the responsibility. So that was great. We both met with groups of college students from ours, WSU Tri-Cities, his University of Washington Tacoma campus, which I had to sit in a room with a bunch of Huskies. That wasn't all that fun, but But it was a great experience that we kind of. In order to see where someone's coming from, you literally have to see where someone's coming from. And it was a great experience for both of us. Later this fall, I'm planning another kind of exchange thing, just like that, to Southern California. Congressman Pete Aguilar, I'm not even sure in all that mess down there where he represents it. Somewhere between LA and San Diego, I'll find out. But that'll be a great experience as well. So and then he's going to come up here. So look forward to welcoming another member of Congress to the Tri-Cities to expose them to the kind of things that we look at as being important in our part of the world. One of those things that concerns me a lot that's still a huge part of our daily conversation, as you know, our president, or excuse me, that was almost a Freudian thing. Our governor just ended his campaign for president, and that sounds like he's going to run for governor for a third time. But as you know, his platform was carbon, clean energy, climate change, all of those things. I think it really, to his credit, and he and I, don't have a lot of things that we see eye and eye on together on, but to his credit, I think it has raised the discourse on that subject. Here, in this part of the country, that's not just a talking point or a platform position. We live every day clean, renewable energy production. From the only nuclear generating plant in the Northwest at Columbia. We've got the largest solar farm in the state in my district. It's outside of Lind, Washington. We've got these wind generation machines all over the place. We've got, of course, our much renowned hydroelectric dams from the Snake and Columbia rivers, which produce renewable, carbon-free, foundational, basic electricity that powers the region. It truly does, and has been a tremendous asset for us for many, many years. But they're under attack, as you know. Part of Riverfest is to draw attention to that, to make sure that the whole community is a spokesperson for these important, hugely important parts of our infrastructure here in the state of Washington and the Pacific Northwest because of salmon and because of the challenges that we've had in making sure that salmon can survive. So we've got a huge educational challenge in front of us to make sure that people on the west side of the state understand the benefits, not only the benefits that the dams bring us and bring them, but the effort and the investment that we have made as a region into making sure that the dams and the salmon can and do coexist. And so please participate in that. And this is something that I never thought in my wildest dreams that I would say publicly or warn people that but the reality is there, that breaching of our dams could happen. It really could happen. So we've got to make sure that we stand up and get our story out there. I talked about priorities a little bit. One of the things, ever since I was first elected, one of my biggest priorities has been working on those issues related to immigration. And with the dynamic that I expressed to you earlier, the way that Congress is, and you wouldn't think that there's a lot of opportunities right now to get any kind of immigration reform legislation passed. But you probably know by now I'm an eternal optimist, and we have a bipartisan group working on H-2A, which is agricultural labor reform, trying to make that more workable for large and small farms, better for the employees and employers. Right now, and that's one of the reasons I'm spending some time while I can at the farm, is because my son has been having a heck of a time finding enough workers. It truly is a crisis situation. And we need to fix it because, as you know, a lot of our economy depends directly on the agricultural industry. And in that statement, that means we depend directly on a viable, legal agricultural workforce. We need those folks from Mexico to come here. We absolutely need them. But I think everybody in this room would agree, and they would too if you asked them, that they need to be here legally. And we're working on ways that we can improve that so that that can happen. The other part of immigration reform, as you know, that I've been very involved in, and this has been one of the most frustrating things, but because this is an issue that I think it polls in the country something like 80%, but that's finding a legal solution for the DACA recipients in our country. Which I've had all kinds of people in different kinds of professions tell me you depend on a lot of DACA individuals. People that were brought here at a very young age illegally. Many of them I've talked to hundreds of them. Some of them have graduated from high school, went to apply to college, and that was the first time they found out they were not U.S. citizens. Many of them don't have any recollection of Mexico or whatever country they came from. Many can't even speak the language. But here they are in legal limbo, and we have got to come up with a way for them to get right. And so that's another priority of mine. My great staff has been good about putting together some remarks for me, and I haven't even looked at them once. I'm going to try to do that, but there's probably some things I should talk about. I don't know. But I think what Lori suggested, and maybe the best thing is, just ask you, what are you interested in? What question could I ask, or what message should I have take away from the meeting today? And when I go back to DC on September 9th, we can get to work on that. So, it's up to me. Oh, okay. Well, you guys all can see the slides, so we just go down the line? Sure. Okay. So Joe Peterson, raise your hand, Joe. The national debt. Oh, that was in my notes. Thank you for saying that. I forgot about it. Do you think our representatives will ever deal with it, or will they just wait for an implosion? You know, wow. I just read an article about this, Joe. Humans, we like to spend money. We like to buy things, right? Members of Congress are no different. We like to buy things. The unfortunate thing about the federal government is that the government can print its own money. Don't you wish you could do that? And the other thing is politicians don't like to say no to people. So we've got these two forces that are just, yeah, you would think that they don't even, nobody pays attention to, what is it, $22 trillion in debt, what we are right now. It's a huge problem. I forget the member of the Joint Chiefs, one of the generals said that the national debt is the largest threat that we face as a nation. So it's a huge thing that we need to get our hands around. We got to get our fiscal ship turned. Will representatives ever deal with it? I hope so. I hope so. But you know about, is it even that much? 30 cents out of every dollar is all we work with to try to balance the budget. It's going to take some spines of steel in order to tackle the issue on the mandatory spending side. And you know what that is? Social Security, Medicare. Those are the kinds of things that just happen every year. We don't appropriate that money. Just increases continue to go on and people receive them. And guess what? How many politicians campaign on saying, I'm going to cut your Social Security benefits? You don't hear that very often, do you? But we've got to come to terms with this because it's eating us alive. And I need help to do that, frankly. Next, anonymous. Oh, we can't have that. How do you see the growing lack of bipartisanship affecting appropriations for, where'd it go? Oh, for continued cleanup activities? And I think I missed a question above that, I'm sorry. You know, it's been an interesting thing. Hanford cleanup has truly been a bipartisan issue. I don't always agree with Senator Murray, but I got to tell you, she has been a tremendous ally, partner in the Senate to making sure that we have adequate funding at Hanford. We play kind of this good cop, bad cop role, I guess, depending on who's in the White House. And so she can be the bad cop now. But that's truly an example of where bipartisanship is alive and well. What worries me more, frankly, you know, we've got the largest cleanup site in the country. You know that. There's other sites in the country, too, that are being worked on. As those get done, get cleaned up, pretty soon we're going to be the last people standing asking for federal dollars for nuclear cleanup. Thank you very much for letting me be with you this afternoon.